Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today's video we're gonna do standing, simply because my dog Nero is lying in my chair where I normally film and I just don't want to make him get up. So yeah, we're gonna do this one standing, so sorry if I'm moving a little bit more than normally. Yeah, I have a hard time standing still. So yeah, today's video is gonna be my wrap up for March of 2023. I had a really good reading month. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, read quite a bit of books, and I had 2 DNFs, which normally I don't really have DNFs, but I decided to be more strict with myself when it comes to reading this year. And yeah, when I don't enjoy a book, I won't force myself to finish them. That is what I usually did, just so I could give it a rating. But to be honest, I don't think it's fair for me to rate a book if I don't enjoy the premise of the book. So yeah, and that is the reason we're gonna start with the 2 DNFs, just so they're out of the way, because obviously my thoughts are a lot more negative about the books than about the rest of the books I listen to. So yeah. So DNF number 1 is Afterlove. This one I got in a book box as an extra. And this is a romance, and I tried to read it. I have my problems with romance. If you watch me a little bit longer, you know that I'm not a romantic person. I either like, people getting it on or don't. So yeah, I I also don't enjoy romance in different books, but yeah, this is romance with a touch of fantasy. Our main character is called Ash. Her parents are from India, so you have a little bit of the cultural background there, and then also Ash is gay, and yeah, she isn't out to everyone, but her mother knows and her father as well, and yeah, so we pretty much get to know. The premise is Ash dies. And when she dies, she doesn't get to go to the afterlife, but she gets picked as one to join the Girl Reaper squad and help souls move on. And yeah, but her only goal is getting back to Poppy, and Poppy is a girl she gets to know at the beginning of the book. And I read 130 pages, so I did get quite a bit into it. At 130 pages, we were still with Ash living and her romance with Poppy, at her time with Poppy. And though I think the book was quite well written, I just didn't enjoy it at all. And so yeah, I decided it wasn't for me, and yeah, I put it aside. I really like the look of the book. It's just sad that I personally don't enjoy the whole romance aspect of it, I hate myself a little bit for it at some points, but I can't really change it, And the second book was a little bit more of a problem with me, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven. This came in a book box, and I actually thought I would like it, and I was quite excited to pick it up, but the premise of the book is really interesting. We have Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and it is only witches. And there are also warlords, but pretty much the witches are the ones that have most of the power. And we have a friend group of 5 who grew up together, and we have one black friend and then 4 white friends, I think. Or we don't get to know of the other ones, but as far as I was into it, it's like that. And yeah, it plays in the UK. Our girls have quite some problems, and the book pretty much gives you a little bit of insight in the younger years from them, a little bit of problems, and then pretty much we jump to them being in their 30s, or near their 30s, somewhere around there. And yeah, one of the girls is the head witch now of the coven, and she pretty much is the villain from the beginning, even though I thought there would be an outside villain, but yeah, she seems to be the villain of the book. And then we have our black girl who gets out of the coven and makes her own black coven, or her own inclusive black coven. And then we have one who goes away and decides to become a vet and work with animals, and then we have two who I think are still in the coven. But to be honest, all of the characters except for like the villainous main leader of the coven and our black girl, I can't remember her name, I'm really sorry, but yeah, she was the coolest of them all as far as I kind of liked her. But yeah, the other three kind of like all feel the same. They don't really stand out. And yeah, it is a book that pretty much is more political commentary than anything else, and I didn't enjoy that at all. I think there's a place for the books, but I think you can destroy a story with making it too political. And I personally felt like the characters were really one-dimensional. Like you could from the beginning see which role the character was supposed to play in the story, and it was like a really rigid kind of role. And then also I feel like men are just like, I don't know, I hate books who hate on one kind of person just like senselessly, and we have like one really nice guy in here, and he gets like such a bad role just because he is a guy, and it's really weird. I don't know, I just don't enjoy the agenda of the book. Because for me, it felt like the author might have wanted to write like a non-fiction book, but thought it would be better packaged in a fictional book. So yeah. Yeah. Also, the book is written by Juno Dawson, who is a trans person herself. So yeah, I mean, she has valid points in the book. Like, there are really valid points in the book. I just didn't enjoy the way it was done. I don't think the story is good. I don't think the way the book is written is good. Even though our characters are in their mid-30s, it feels like they're teens, which I find to be really, really irritating, because I'm also, like, well, I turned 30 in 2 years, but like, you know, I'm nearly in my 30s, and all of the people in here felt so immature and weird for like that age, you know, that I thought in the beginning, before they told you how old they are, I thought we would be in like their 17, 18, like those years. And yeah, actually it's in their 30s. So yeah, sadly I didn't enjoy it. The copy is really, really pretty. I think if you are interested in like more of the political commentary and you don't mind that it's packaged in like a fantasy-ish story, maybe pick it up. I mean, I know there are a lot of different opinions out there. I just didn't enjoy it, okay? Okay, so let's continue with the books that I actually read. Well, I mean, I got 130 pages in both of these books, you know. I didn't DNF them right, like, after 10 pages or so, but yeah. Now let's get to the books that I finished and that I actually gave a star rating to. And the first one I actually started the month with. I finished on the first day of the month, and that is Enchantress Endgame by David Eddings. This is the 5th book in the Belgariad series, an older fantasy series by David and Lee Eddings. Sadly, in these copies, only David is on the cover, even though Lee did write a big part of it as well. In later books, she is also given credit on the covers. On mine, actually, sadly not. But yeah, this is the 5th part. It is the end of the Belgariad series. It is the first series. We have like a second series, the Molorian series after that, and then we have some prequels and stuff, but yeah. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think it's the strongest fantasy series in general, but what I liked in this one is our guys all go to war. It is like a really, more or less a really classical fantasy. So all of our guys go to war for the main queen that oversees all of the kingdoms. And the women, they stay back, but obviously there's still trouble in the kingdoms, and so the women kind of like manage the trouble in their own ways, which is like kind of like playing dumb, for example, and making the other opponents so annoyed and angry that they make mistakes and stuff. It's a really funny thing, actually, even though the book isn't meant to be funny, but I thought it was like kind of like a really nice thing to do, to not be like, oh, the kingdoms all like crumbled because the men weren't there. No, it's like, yeah, all of the men really underestimate the women, and the women are actually really good, at keeping the kingdom together. Yeah, so I really liked that aspect. Other than that, it was a fine ending. It's like a really happy-go-lucky ending. I'm fine with that. I personally like it when a book ends on like a happy note, and especially if it's the 5th one in the series. So yeah, I was fine with that. I will continue with the Mandalorian series and then read the prequel, because I actually bought like all of the books at once, secondhand. So yeah, really enjoyed it. The second book I read sadly wasn't as good, and that is Canadian Monsters by Robert Keller. This is a really small book, and in the end I could only give it 2 stars. And my main criticism is that it reads like somebody copied Wikipedia articles and put them in like a book form. It is, the formatting doesn't do it for me, to be honest. Like, you can see it really, it's formatted. I mean, it is a non-fiction, so obviously it isn't formatted like a novel, but it really reads like Wikipedia articles. And I'm quite sure that the author like put it all together. I don't say like he copied it, but he did it in a way that it reads like an article, and I wasn't the biggest fan. Also, the book is really like only like basic points about the killers, and for me, a good true crime book focuses on the victims and telling their story, you know? Yeah, I do want to know something about the perpetrators, but I want my focus to be on like, how did they catch the killer? What happened to the victim, to the family of the victims, like what was it with all of that, you know? And there's nothing of that in here, and so yeah. It's just like an overview about Canadian killers, so I might look more into some of them and look for other books about them, but yeah, because of that, I don't really think that that is a book that you need to pick up, to be honest. Then, for my third book that month, I read The Mastermind of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the 6th book in the Martian series, and in this book, if you watched my videos, like my wrap-ups before, all of the other 5 books were really formulaic, and this one is a little bit better, which was nice. I still gave it 3 stars. None of the books have gotten a better rating than that. But yeah, in this book, we have another Englishman coming to Mars, the same way John Carter did in the first book, or like in a really similar way. But yeah, he knows about John Carter because he read the stories of John Carter, but he doesn't know him personally. And so he comes to Mars as well, but he strands in like a scientific settlement with like one guy who's like the scientist there who has the ability to like transplant brains into different bodies, so that someone, when they grow older, they can go to him and he will put their brain in a younger person's body, and so they get a younger body, and pretty much he makes them immortal that way. And our main character strands there, and the empress of like a neighboring kingdom gets a younger body, and he really loves it's pretty much love at first sight, you know. He sees the body and he thinks the girl is so pretty, and then her body gets given to the empress, and the brain of the girl gets put into the empress like really old body. And so yeah, he starts then to fall in love with her personality actually, and he doesn't mind her body too much, but he wants to get her own body back, and that is pretty much the story. So it isn't as formulaic as first ones, but he does have to save the girl at some points in the book. Just not as excessive as it is in the first 5 books. So yeah, I kind of liked it. I gave it more like 3.5 stars. I don't think it's good enough for more, but yeah, it's a sci-fi series. It's really old. I kind of enjoy it for like the violence aspect of the books. Because like the fighting stuff, it's really cool because our main characters are from Earth and they have Earth muscles, so they have different abilities than the Martians that are living on Mars. So yeah, that is kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm slowly making my way through the series. And then I finished my first of 2 Stephen King books I read in March, and the first one was Dreamcatcher. So this book, it is so long. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it in the end, but that is where I have to put the focus in the end, because I think the book is too long. I think the story could have been shorter. And also, I think it's not like a typical Stephen King, because at the beginning we have kind of like a little bit of like body horror, and you would think that the book continues that way, but we start with body horror, we go into alien, sci-fi stuff with military focus. So yeah, I enjoyed it in the end, but I don't think if you pick up Stephen King books, I don't think that is what you would accept from the book. Like, you wouldn't think that the book would be about aliens, you know? And I don't think the blurb, it hints to it, but it doesn't outright tell it, you know? So yeah, it is an alien story. We have a little bit of body horror containing to the aliens, and in the end we have we have a group of friends, 4, who then more or less try to save the world from the aliens. And yeah, 4 stars. If you hate long books that are unnecessarily long, don't bother with it. There are points in the book where I'm like, okay, we could have done that way faster. There was no need for like all the explanations, you know. But yeah, in the end, I liked the story. And also, you have to read it to find out why it's called Dreamcatcher, because that was really interesting. After I read that one, I picked up Cat's Cradle as an audiobook from my library, and that is by Kurt Vonnegut, and it is actually the first book from him I've ever read, and I didn't enjoy it. I have to say, I think it's because I listened to it as an audiobook. I think if I would pick up the novel, I would like it more. But as it is, as an audiobook, I gave it 2 stars. I thought the book was way too confusing. The main gist is that it's about a guy who wants to do a book about a physicist who made a bomb that was used, you know, a really bad bomb. And it gets weirder and weirder with the book going on, and in the end, that he's a journalist really isn't mentioned. Yeah, I don't want to spoil the story. It is really out there, and I think it is mostly about like humans being lost and the consequences because we destroy so much. But yeah, it was hard to follow the story as an audiobook, because at some points I felt like I missed stuff, but I didn't miss it, it just wasn't there. So yeah, it is a really weird book. I didn't enjoy it as an audiobook. I will probably in the future pick it up as like a physical copy, just because I think I would actually enjoy it if I can follow the story easier, which if I read a physical, obviously I can follow the story easier. So yeah, but 2 stars for that. And then after that, I picked up another audiobook, because Cat's Cradle isn't the biggest book, you know. And so I picked up another one, and that is called A Taste for Poison, and it's by Neil Bradbury. And I'm sad to say that he, to this point, hasn't written any other books, but was only published in 2022, so we have hope that maybe he will publish another thing. But yeah, A Taste for Poison is a true crime book, and like a non-fiction science book at the same time. Because he talks about poisons that were used by people, but he not only talks about like the criminal things that were done with the poison, but he talks about where does it come from, what is it used for. One of the poisons, for example, is insulin, which we all know is for diabetics. They need that, and for them obviously it isn't a poison, but it can be used as a poison. And he talks about like all of the like scientific things about the poison, and then he also gives like examples, true crime examples where the poison was used, mostly by women, because women are actually way more poisonous than men are. But yeah, the book was fantastic. I really loved it. It was the perfect audiobook to listen to while doing like a puzzle and stuff. Absolutely love. I gave it 5 stars, and yeah, if he ever publishes anything else, I will be the first to pick that up, and I will definitely get a physical copy of this one, just because I was so impressed. It was so interesting, because the focus was on the science, way more than it was on the true crime, which is really great. After that, I picked up a new physical book, and it is the first of 2 Sandersons I've read this month. Yeah, I read The Well of Ascension, finally. It took me way too long to pick it up after reading the first book in the Mistborn series, but yeah. here we continue with Vin and Eden and all of the crew that still lives, and yeah, obviously I can't tell you much story-wise because it is the second in the series, but let me tell you, it is a perfect second book. It is as great as the first one. The story continues. Much of it is in the same place, but I still think it's a really, really interesting book. Like Vin and Eden and all of the other ones do have a lot of like growing to do in the book, and yeah, it's so good. I love Vin. I love Seist. I'm so interested to see how part 3 is now, which I will read this month. So come back for next month's wrap up if you want to know what I thought about part 3. But yeah, it is fantastic. I really like where the story is going. It is like a really hard-hitting book at times. I nearly cried a few times while reading it, which like, I didn't used to be someone who cried at sad stuff in books, but yeah, it turns out I turned mushy for Brandon Sanderson books, which like, yeah, I loved it. If you get to it, please read the series. It is fantastic, and yeah, it is the first of 2 Sandersons I read this month, so there's one still to come. After I read that, or more or less parallel, I listened to another 2 audiobooks. The first one is No One Goes Alone by Eric Larson, and that is his only fiction book. He normally writes non-fiction, and he wanted to do a horror book, and so he released it audiobook only, because in his opinion, horror books are best done as an audiobook, which I have my opinions about. But yeah, I gave it 2 stars. I wasn't a fan. Let's say it like it is. It is historical, you know. The story is like 1908 or something like that, like right around that corner. And we have a lot of like... It is an expedition to an island where there's only like one house sitting on that island, and the rest is like only like really barren, you know. And there lived a couple there who vanished, and they pretty much do an expedition from a university to find out what happened to them, and they sent 5 or 6 people, and 3 are women. So yeah, 6 people I think, and 3 are women. And so there's a lot of problems with like, oh, she's a woman, I hate that, like I wish women would have never come. There's a lot of like unnecessary romance type stuff, but it's more or less like the guy's just fawning over the women, and I feel like the women didn't have any chance whatsoever. It's really weird. And then it is a horror book, and it isn't like, there's no horror really in the book. It's just like, oh, a dead person turned up. Where did he come from? But it's never really like a big mystery, because our main character for the biggest part of the book thinks that the bad things happening is a joke. So they never really have an impact, because our main character also thinks that it's a joke for a lot of the book. And yeah, also, why did it need to be an audiobook? He doesn't use it. There aren't any special effects. There aren't any like creepy noises or stuff like that. That isn't used, so I don't get why it has to be an audiobook. So yeah, 2 stars for that. I didn't enjoy it. I don't think I will pick up any of his non-fiction. Yeah, I just wasn't really impressed, to be honest. Then the second one actually was a really good one. That is called The White Robot by Peter Brown, and I get that one 4 stars. It feels like a little bit of a children's book, but I really enjoyed the story. We have like a robot who's on a ship, but the ship sank, and a robot gets like pushed onto the beach in like his crate, and then some animals come along and open the crate, like look at the stuff, you know, like the crates are already broken, but yeah, they get into it, and they touch the on button on the robot, and it's the only like complete robot still there. And so yeah, our robot comes to life, and I don't know, but it is a robot, you know, so they don't really have a gender, but yeah, our robot then thinks his job is to be on the island, because obviously there isn't anyone else to give him different directions. And he finds a little duckling and starts to be like the mother of the duckling. And yeah, the story goes from there. Our robot tries to fit in on the island, and it's a really, really cute book. And it's actually a series, so I will have to continue with that one, because the ending is really, it's a cool ending, but it's also really like a sad ending, you know. But yeah, it's a really nice story if you want to listen to a book that is just mostly nice, you know, and like a good story to relax to. Pick that up. I think for that it's perfect. The second Stephen King book I've read this month was Insomnia. This is also a really, really big book. And the same as Dreamcatcher, I think it is unnecessarily long. But the story makes up for it. Yeah, I hate to say it. I wish it was like 200, 300 pages shorter. I think that would be absolutely perfect. But yeah, I really like the story. It's obviously about insomnia, and it is. I don't know if I can say it's a horror book. I would say it's more of a mystery book with really weird elements that I don't want to spoil because I think it's best if you don't know about them. But yeah, we have a lot of like aggression due to the insomnia and stuff, and I think it was a really, really, really good story. I loved the ending. Yeah, I don't want to tell too much because I think going blind into this is actually the best because I didn't know anything about the book when I picked it up, and I loved that because I was so confused and so many parts of the book, and when it all came together, it was just like this really great, like, oh my god, I realize what it is now. So yeah, that was really, really great. Also, both Dreamcatcher and also Insomnia play in Derry or near Derry. So there are a lot of like pointers to different books, like obviously it, and also The Gunslinger, which was really, really interesting for me because I didn't know that The Gunslinger actually plays in the same universe. So yeah, really, really interesting in that. But yeah, I think it's a good book. Just don't bother with it if you really hate unnecessary long sections that don't need to be in a book. I don't mind in the end. If the story is good, like, it's fine with me. It is the reason that I didn't give it 5 stars, just because I'm a little bit angry about it. But yeah, I won't be too angry about it. But yeah, if you really hate that, I wouldn't bother with those. There are a lot better Stephen King books than For You. But yeah, I like the story of Insomnia a lot. Then I listened to another audiobook, and that is Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman. I gave it 3 stars. I have to be honest, I don't think... Well, I listened to it while I was ill, so I think that partially is to blame for the 3 stars, because I don't think my head really could work with the stories. But yeah, it is a short story collection. I think my biggest critique point is that it doesn't have a theme, so you jump from different genres to different stuff, and I think it's really confusing, especially if you, but I think it would have been confusing anyway. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that. I tend to like themed short story collections a lot more, but yeah, other than that, it's your typical Neil Gaiman. There's a Doctor Who story in there, there's a Sherlock Holmes story in there. Those 2 I really liked. But yeah, other than that, I don't really remember too much about it, and it was too much jumping around for my taste. And then we're gonna finish the month off with another Brandon Sanderson, as I told you. And this is just the prettiest book. Look at it! I love it so much. This is Secret Project #1, and it finally arrived with a little bit of delay. But yeah, I got it this month, and I had to read it directly, and it's called Tress of the Emerald Sea, obviously by Brandon Sanderson. And yeah, it is this really pretty edition. It looks so good on a bookshelf. And I gave it 5 stars because the main character really reminded me of myself when I was younger. And yeah, he says it's an adult story. I personally think it's an adult story more leaning towards YA, and our main character also is like in her late teens. So yeah, I didn't mind it at all. For me, this is like a fairy tale mystery fantasy book. It reads fairy tale-ish, but not like a fairy tale. I'm not the biggest fan of fairy tales. Like, I haven't read one where I was like, oh yeah, I really loved that. So yeah, but this one, I like the fairy tale-ish atmosphere, and this world is so cool. This also plays in the Cosmere, and the voice that tells the book is Hoyt, actually. So if that name tells you something, you know. But yeah, we have a world with 12 oceans, and these oceans are filled with spores instead of water. And when water falls onto the spores as rain, for example, they have different abilities. And for example, the Emerald Sea, where Tess is from, if water touches spores, they grow into vines, pretty much. And they, well, try to kill you, for example. Like, they're really, really dangerous. And we have like 12 seas, 10 which are more or less like dangerous but normal. And then we have like the really, really dangerous sea, which is the Crimson Sea. And we have the one where the bad sorceress lives. And there's also the main part of our story. The boy Triss has a thing for, gets ransomed off to the sorceress, and Triss gets over herself and well, she's a really timid girl, you know, she doesn't want to impose on anyone, and it doesn't stop her from pursuing the guy she loves and trying to rescue him, even though she has no idea what to do. And she meets a lot of people throughout the story, and there's a talking rat, which I love. I love talking animals in stories. But yeah, and so Triss really goes through like this journey, and she really grows with her journey, and yeah, I really love that. So yeah, I'm really happy with the book. I can understand if you were disappointed because it reads so much more YA that adult than you maybe would have imagined. So yeah, I can totally understand that. I personally don't mind it in this book at all, to be honest, because I don't know, there was so much growing in this book that I really liked. So yeah. And that are all the books I read in March. As you can see, I had quite the, well, I think my average came out to be 3 stars. So actually I had like a really average reading month, but a lot of bad books and a lot of really good books. Well, if you can't count 2 stars as bad, I think no book is really a bad book. But I gave it 2 stars, you know. I reserved 1 star for the really bad books, but you know, a lot of 2 stars, a lot of 5 stars. So yeah, I don't know, they cancelled each other out, so it was a really average reading month. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. As you can see, I'm also really back into like big fantasy, and yeah, Brandon Sanderson has rekindled my love for big fantasy books. So this month, actually, there are a lot of those. If you watched last week's video, which was my TBR for April, you will have seen that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you read any of these books and have like a different opinion, or like want to share your opinion, please do that in the comments below so we can all talk about the books. If you want to subscribe, that would make me really happy. But yeah, I hope you have a good week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!